Hello and welcome to the Kaizen Academy podcast. I'm Justin and I'm here with my co-host Cal. How you been, Cal?
I've been all right, not too bad. I mean, we spoke about this right before we started, but I'm in a bit of like an overthinking phase again. You
Oh
kind of go through
no.
the motions, but I think I think I see the light. I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I'm starting work soon, so I
Hey.
don't think I'll be in this position too long. But yeah, it's weird because I feel like the last time we talked about this, I was like, yeah, I got myself in a really good space. Like I was keeping myself busy, but it's never permanent. You know what I mean? Like these things
Mm.
are never permanent. It's like I could tell you I'm good these few months, and then like in a few months' time, you come back to me and you're like, "How you going, Cal?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm losing my mind."
My life is in tatters.
Yeah,
Not that
actually.
your life's in tatters. I reckon. Yeah, like you were saying, just a bit too much time to think. And I reckon you got to keep yourself busy, eh?
Yeah, and like honestly, getting a chance to talk to you as well, even hearing like very candid things like you were saying, like Cal, you're in a good position. I was like, you know what? That was actually I know you said it very offhandedly, but I think
Mm.
that was something that I needed to hear this whole week. Like,
Hey.
um, it was very brief. You literally just said, "Oh, but you're in a pretty good position," and I was like, you know what, Justin, goddamn, you are very right, and I think
Outside
that really
perspective.
turned things around for me. Yeah, and it felt genuine because it was so like it was just so candid. You know what I mean? I was like, oh man,
Mm.
you know what, fire out. I am. Yeah, so I gotta put things back into perspective for me. But yeah, I'm enjoying my break. I got a few weeks before I actually start working, so
Mm.
um, really trying to just enjoy my time and like enjoy what it is I am doing right now. Whatever process that I'm in right now, which kind of touches on the things that we'll be talking about today. But we'll leave that for a bit later.
Definitely.
What
So
is it though? What is it that we'll be talking about, Justin?
So today we're going to be focusing on a book that we've both read. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and very edgy sounding title. I feel like sometimes it's a bit of a hard sell because from the title it seems like it's a book about not caring about what others think, and I guess there's a little bit of that in there, but really that's kind of just the hook to kind of like drag you into a bit of a
The
deeper
headline.
conversation. A headline,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, to catch your attention. The book is the way I would characterize it is that it's a book about values. So initially, it kind of just talks about, okay, what are good values to have? What are kind of bad values to have in your life? And we'll kind of go into what that means to us, I guess, a little bit
Yeah.
more in a bit. And then after that, it just goes over, okay, what are some values that the author thinks are good to have in your life? And a lot of them come from religions, actually, like Buddhism, Stoicism, he draws a lot from those, and in general, just an amazing book. Every time I come back to it, I always pick up something new, or it's like we were saying, it's a good reminder of things that you should be doing, but it's like, oh, okay, recently I haven't been really living my life to that standard or to that value.
Exactly.
What was your impression of the book, Cal, because you read it
I
relatively recently?
Yeah. And really long ago as well. Like, you introduced me to this book like 2 years ago, and I think that was kind of the start of my enlightenment. Is too heavy of a word, but I do feel like it was a big step in my life for like of just growing maturely, like in terms of my maturity, and just this book was definitely like at the beginning of it. I do see it like when I turned the new leaf. This book was there, and just hearing so many like almost like sobering advice, tips. I don't know, like just like perspectives, I guess. Um, I think one of the really attractive things for me is I come from an extremely Buddhist background, so just seeing Buddhism and those values kind of repackaged in a very modern, in a very secular way, where it felt, because I guess there's always some kind of stigma sometimes when it comes to religion. People kind of dismiss it because of maybe some of the past. I don't know, some kind of occurrence or some of their personal experiences. But it was really nice to kind of hear those values. And it's like, wait, I learned that when I was young, and then kind of read back to you, but in a more 21st century, I guess, context. And
Yeah,
like that was really
repackaged a
nice.
little
I think,
bit.
yeah, that was really nice for me. And yeah, I think that was definitely a big part of why I enjoyed the book so much and what got me really hooked. Um,
And just to
I
like
think, yeah,
jump in there, I think I would put myself in that category of like, oh, because I'm not Buddhist, and a lot of times I always knew there's probably like there's a lot of good lessons to be learned, but often like learning about it, there's a lot of dogma to it.
yeah,
Whereas this book, it kind of just focuses on things that are, I don't know how you would describe it, but without that are more secular, I guess. They just
mm,
take the values, but then explain it in a more secular way,
yeah, yeah. It definitely makes it a bit more, um,
a
I
bit more
guess, digestible
accessible.
for
Yeah,
like, yeah, for our generation, which I feel like there is a trend of like kind of moving away from religion as we kind of enter this new generation. A lot of people are kind of like, um, I don't know whether it's reactionary or like kind of they're over it. You know, they don't really kind of rebelling against our parents, kind of thing. Oh, I'm kind of over the religion or whatever it is. I don't know, but I think yeah, just that in itself was really interesting for me to kind of hear a lot of the things that I might have learned when I was really young. That was kind of mixed into stories and storytelling. Because when you do learn Buddhism when you're young, you know they kind of teach it to you as like, what is it? Uh, like anecdotes and stuff like that, like Buddha's life and all those cool things. But then to kind of hear it with like research, that's what I really like. You know, when they re-explain a lot of this stuff secularly, they do incorporate a lot of research and there's a lot of science. And I think when you're speaking to this new generation, to like to us, we're very inclined to kind of switch on when we hear that research. Oh, it's backed by some kind of research, or you know, there's real evidence for this, there's real evidence for that. So that was really cool.
and
But I think the other thing was,
I
yeah,
also find one thing that really drove home the points for me was that the anecdotes. He still uses anecdotes in the book, but they're very modern
mm,
anecdotes, and
yes,
often
yeah,
they hit really close to home. Like, oh yeah, like there's a lot of people that do this, and then it leads to a lot of unhappiness on their own part. And I'm like,
yeah.
sounds really familiar. I'm pretty sure I've done that before.
That is yeah, yeah, yeah. Literally what I was gonna say. Like, I think the book in itself is it's like a couple degrees away from therapy. I think, and it's like it gives you a very, I don't know, like an unbiased commentary of your life if it applies, right? And in this case, it did very much apply to my life and a lot of the things that I needed to hear that I didn't really want to hear from my friends just because of my ego, my pride, and you know whatever biases that I might have. But hearing it from the book was definitely really helpful. Um, and it, yeah, like I mean, oh my god, the genre is literally called self-help, isn't it? So like when you read these to yourself, it kind of empowers you. It doesn't feel like you know what I mean? Instead of like reaching out for help, which kind of makes you feel a little weak to some degree. When you read it back, it almost feels like no, you're helping yourself. You got this. It's like you know, it's in your hands kind of thing, and that's very attractive to me as well. Or that was very attractive to me. So yeah, a lot of interesting things that stuck out, but those were the few things that stuck with me, the long term, I guess.
Awesome. So I guess to kind of set the context for all of the listeners, I'll just kind of state the fundamental framework, I guess, that everything in the book is built off of, and it's that you got to choose good values in your life if you want to live a happy life, if you want to live just a fulfilling life, I guess. Because often, if you don't consciously think about it, you kind of just throughout your life, you pick up shitty values. Shitty
Mm.
values being things like just chasing pleasure, right? Chasing highs. I think most people would agree that a very simplistic algorithm of, I guess, of living your life, of just chasing the next high is probably not the best way to live your life. Avoiding struggle, avoiding like any pain at all is probably
Mm.
another bad value to have. And why does that matter? Well, I don't know. At least in my personal experience, when I recognize that I'm living my life through a shitty value, the way I'm measuring myself is using a poor metric, then it leads to lower productivity. It leads to just unhappiness in general, a lot of anxiety. As an example, a good example would be just say academics, right? It's often like that's during when we're at school, when we're at uni, that's the way we measure ourselves. And as an example, shitty value would be I need to come first, or I need to come some arbitrary value. I need to come the top half of my cohort. Otherwise, I'm doing poorly. And that's not a good value to measure yourself by, because one, it's not in your control. Good values are under your control. So you could be in the top half just by not trying at all, but then all of your peers just aren't trying as well. Or you could try as hard as you can, and you could still be in the bottom half, just because everyone else is super talented. But that's not a really good way to live your life, right? Because it doesn't drive action. It's not like it's disconnected to how you can improve yourself. Because ultimately, like, you just want to be in that context. You just want to be working hard. You want to motivate yourself to continue improving and stuff. So a better metric in that case would be, did I do my best this week? Did I put in enough hours? And if you did, no matter the result, that's good. Whereas, okay, what if you didn't put in the hours that week, but then you still did well in your test? Well, that's probably still a bad week, and that's what you should kind of measure yourself by. So that's kind of how I see the book. It's fundamentally just saying, okay, there are values that are better than others, and it's good to consciously choose them, and then the rest of the chapters are just, here are some values that people have found to be good to live your life by.
Oh man, like, so basically, the title kind of plays into this as well. You're not supposed to give an F about many things, because there are so many things to give an F about. And if you choose the right things to give the F about, I guess, that's kind of what Mark is trying to sell, I guess, in this case. If you find the right ones, the more wholesome values to kind of focus your energy in, therein it lies, like, a more happy life. Let's just keep it simple like that, right? We're not going to try to define what happiness is too deeply, and we're not trying to search for, like, the ultimate truth. There is no like end goal or anything like that. But just kind of making sure that you live your life according to these good values. And then, in the beginning of the book, there's like a nice little rundown of, like, what he does, or what he's learned so far as to be, like, good values, honesty and truth and all of those nice things, right? But that school one's really important, because I think a lot of students will beat themselves up over not getting the right marks, or not like ranking correctly, when in reality they have indeed put in, like, so much effort, and they deserve the praise. They deserve, like, kind of the pat on the back. And, like, you don't want to put yourself in, like, this toxic environment, like, internally, where you're punishing yourself for not doing the right things, because you're measuring yourself based on these external factors. And that's, I think, a part of looking for good values as well. A lot of the good values are intrinsic. A lot of the good values you control, and they're not really kind of dependent on other people. It's not like, I guess I remember the ones off the top of my head were, like, fame, right? Fame is kind of like something that's externally driven. And, like, if you kind of chase something like that, I want fame, I want to be recognized by everyone, then you just kind of set yourself up for failure. Whereas you look for something a bit more wholesome, right? And a more wholesome way to, like, go about learning would be to kind of set those goals for yourself. Did I put in my effort, what I truly think is the best that I could have done this week? And if I did, then awesome, right? If you didn't, then that's all right. The metrics that schools use, they're very generalized. What you need to use for yourself, you can't kind of base it off that.
Definitely. Because, like, just to extrapolate again on that school example, right? If you measure yourself, or, like, if you measure yourself through the value of just external results, there's only two possible outcomes, and they're bad. One is that you do well, but then you don't, but even though you're not putting in the effort, then, sorry, if you do well and then you're not putting in the effort, then you kind of feel like an imposter, or eventually you're going to hit a point where your natural ability can't carry you anymore, right? Whether depending on how just naturally intelligent you are, it could be in high school, it could be in uni, or it could be when you enter the workforce. But eventually, you're going to hit that point, and then you're going to feel very lost, because you just feel like I feel like you feel like an imposter. And
Man,
the
that's where
opposite.
imposter syndrome kind of derives from, eh? Like just that lack of effort and like just having the wrong values, the wrong ways that you measure yourself. Oh, that's man, I never thought about it like that. Yeah, actually, but
Because if we think of the converse, right, it's okay, say you measure yourself by, am I working hard enough? One, like, okay, if you're constantly working hard and you're getting poor results, at least you know, like, you're doing your best. One, there's
mm,
that. And then eventually your results, your external results will improve. If you're putting in the hours, like, no matter what, you will eventually improve your results because of that.
mm.
And
There is growth that's gonna come. I get that.
yeah, if you're constantly growing, it's impossible for you to not eventually get good results, right?
Yeah.
Good
Mm,
outcomes. And the other outcome, if you have a poor value of just looking at external results, is that you're working really hard, but then you could be getting poor results. Um, and in that case, because you're constantly measuring yourself by that metric, then it's like, oh, I'm working so hard, but I'm not getting the results I want. Why put in the effort? Whereas that's kind of not where you want to be. You should measure yourself by how much you're putting in, and it's goes back to that cliche saying of don't measure yourself by what other people are doing. Measure yourself
mm.
by how you're doing compared to who you were yesterday, right? And I think
Right.
that
Yeah.
it's related to that value.
Yeah. What is it like? It's hard though. Let's just not pretend. Let's not beat around the bush that you're not like kind of grown and raised your whole life to then like measure yourself and compare yourself against these external factors. It's hard, and I think that's why this is not something that. Oh, that's why this book even exists, right? If it wasn't hard, this book wouldn't exist because a lot of the things he'd say here is just like, oh, duh, right? But I think a lot of people go through these like growing pains of learning to look inwards and then finding value and finding like a satisfaction of doing so and kind of detaching yourself from those external factors. And like I mentioned, like I remember one of our previous conversations, I was telling you like how, I was in a rut and then kind of making my way out of the rut and kind of getting out of that little depressive mode or kind of period was just understanding that I was doing the best that I could, and then realizing that I was doing the best that I could. And even though I got a lot of job application rejections in my email, those wouldn't really phase me as hard because I knew I was just doing my best. I was doing the most that I could. And I honestly felt so good in that time, regardless of what the outcome was. And so now, the crazy thing is now I've already got something secured, but I was like, I strayed away from that thinking, and I wasn't being as mindful as I usually was. And having something secured, I have a job secured for in the next 6 weeks. I'll be starting work, and like, and even then, right, knowing that I wasn't doing the best because now I'm chilling. Like I do know that I guess I do know that I have that job secured, so I wasn't really working as hard in my other job applications. I wasn't really studying as hard, and knowing that I wasn't doing my best, that honestly made me feel terrible. So even though I had like the external like results to show like, hey, you are a successful individual, the intrinsic kind of like little alarm was telling me that, oh, like even though you have it, you're not actually doing the best that you can or the most that you can right now. And like there was that guilt, and that guilt was like much stronger than not having, say, a grad role or not having some kind of acceptance from some kind of uni or some kind of job or whatever like that. And I think that was a really big wake up call for me, that like even though I could have this secured, I was so sad, or I was so like, I was just wasn't in my right mind, and I was confused why that was the case. But now looking back, I was like, yeah, just making sure that you kind of measure yourself correctly. And that's the thing. We've had to come back to this book so often, just come back and listen to it again because there is so much to unpack here. And I think after every listen, you might hold on to like maybe one or two things for the rest of your life, but there are like 100 other things that you should probably kind of be more aware of, and they just kind of slowly come through with more and more listens.
And that's the amazing thing about, or that's what I find amazing about this book, is that you can kind of change your value like almost immediately. It's completely under your control. Of course, it's kind of like you can't completely change it. It's still kind of embedded, but you can, if you kind of just come to the realization, like you were just saying of, oh, like I'm working super hard right now. I'm doing all these job applications. I shouldn't there's no need to feel shitty, even though I'm not getting the external results, because you're putting in the effort. And I feel like that could be an almost instantaneous switch in terms of just how fulfilled or happy you feel in your life. But of course, a lot of times these values are deeply embedded. But what I've found is that you can actually change your values by just taking a moment, and refocusing. Like, should I be feeling bad about this right now? Is that a good value to have? How can I reframe this so that I'm measuring it by a better metric, by a better value? And by just repeatedly doing this process, I found that you can consciously change the values that you have in your head, I guess. But let's jump into the discussion points. We've put down quite a few. And the first one that I want to jump into was that negative emotions serve a purpose. You shouldn't avoid them. You should lean into them. And this is one of the biggest realizations I had in this book, because I guess growing up, I always thought, and I think it's kind of portrayed in the media, it's that you should always be happy, right? If you're not happy, then something's wrong. And that's not necessarily true. There's a reason you have negative emotions. It's not your brain just being a prick and like, you know what, you get to feel bad today because of whatever. No, like there's a reason why your brain has the function of sending negative emotions, and from a biological sense, it's kind of for your own survival, right? But I kind of look at it as that it's telling you that something's wrong. So if you're feeling a lot of anxiety or just sadness and stuff, to me, it's generally a signal that there's something that deep down I'm unhappy about in my life, and I need to just sit down, take a moment, and really think about that. And yeah, sometimes and that really tends to work. So, like if I just sit there and take 5 minutes, just write down my thoughts on a piece of paper, it could be something that was clouded in my day-to-day life. It will come to the surface, and then, okay, it's because I'm not living my life how deep down I feel like I should be. So let's make some changes, and then that tends to work really well. So negative emotions I think that was the biggest lesson for me, actually, is that negative emotions serve a purpose.
Yeah. What is it like? I mean, that's something that I don't know, like, what is the demographic that we exist a part of? But like, I think growing up, we always we're like indoctrinated into avoiding failure and just avoiding the bad stuff, and it gets carried away. And this book is definitely a champion of embracing the negatives, like embracing the negative emotions. And it's a huge part of meditation as well. So I think, like, I remember, like, kind of the last month when I was re-listening to this and kind of having that resonate again, I think it got me back into just meditating again, because I think that's a big part of this as well, like more of the practical side, where it's like, yeah, you gotta kind of just be there for your emotions, right? Not be carried away by them, not kind of shun the negative emotions that you have. There is no reason to kind of shame yourself into thinking like, oh, you're having these negative emotions. Oh, you're a terrible person. Why are you thinking this? Why are you thinking that? Right? And just kind of being there with your emotions. And I think I'm extremely amateur when it comes to like meditation. I'm like really just getting my foot in the door right now. But I think there is a lot of overlap there, right? Learning to be okay with those negative emotions is a huge part of meditation and a huge part of this book as well. But yeah, and just an extension of learning to be okay with my failures as well. I think that's something that a lot of people have to kind of just learn to get around, man. Like it's so weird. I don't know where it honestly in this moment, I don't know where it stems from. Is it just like our education system? Is it how our parents? I don't know, man. But like I've always grown up with like the ultimate fear of failure. And
It's like,
so
do not fail. Whereas,
yeah.
like growing like after like being an adult now, it's like, oh no, failure is a necessary part of growing, of learning, right? And it shouldn't be something associated with so much shame,
Yes.
because then people become scared to fail. Then hence, I don't want to fail, so I'm not going to play at all in the first place. I'm just going to hide in my shell.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes paralyzing, and I think that was very frustrating for me. I found a lot of things. Oh, I think a lot of my experiences as I kind of transitioned out of uni, or even like at the end of uni, was just like I saw myself so frozen in the fear of failure that I would not go for things, and I wouldn't do things that I'd really want to do, like things that I deep down really wanted to pursue. You know, and it just felt like a huge hindrance to my performance as well, like how I would carry myself at the internships or something like that, like especially at Salesforce, man. When I was doing solution engineering, it was just like a lot of presentations, and the fear, right, the fear of failure, when it comes to that, oh my god, it was just ridiculous. And it just came across, I guess, meeting more people as well, meeting more people with different perspectives, meeting more people who've kind of been brought up with a more like positive environment where they were taught very early on that it's okay to fail. You see how well they flourish and like thrive in those kind of like high pressure environments as well. Whereas me, like, I found myself buckling so hard because I was like, oh my god, like the pressure of failing, you know, for this certain project is too high. I don't even want to do it. I don't even want to like give it my attempt, because if I give it my attempt, then I'll know that I'm not good enough, and then I don't know. It's just like a crazy feedback loop that just destroys me. But yeah, like leaning into your negative emotions is so important, so important for me as well.
For sure. So that's one of the main things, I guess, from this lesson of negative emotions serve a purpose. But I guess, like in my own experience as well, like another facet of that same idea is sadness, right? Like often, are you feeling sad, or you're just not feeling very good? The natural thing to do is try to avoid that emotion. Go play some games, go out, like run away from the emotion. But I found that you really have to just deal with that emotion. You've got to sit there and just face it. And once you do,
Mm.
like you grow from it so much, and it helps you get over it faster, I think. Say you go through like a big breakup or a big failure at um, in your career, right? You have to face it sooner or later. You can keep running away from it, and it will always be prodding at you in the back of your mind, and then eventually you'll need to face it anyway. Or you could try face it straight away. And I found that if you try face it straight away, you just get over it that much faster.
Right. I remember there was like this kind of reminded me of like just like social anxieties as well. You know, like, and like I think I was reading this somewhere. It was like exposure therapy, where it's like if you're really like scared of something, you just throw yourself there and kind of like teach your body. Like, say you're absolutely afraid of doing, I don't know, A or B or something like that. So you kind of just like throw yourself into the deep end, and kind of show yourself, or show your brain, teach your brain that, hey, you know, it's not, you don't need to be deathly afraid of these things. No one's dying or anything like that. I remember you were like talking about how this is so long ago, but remember like learning to hold eye contact with strangers. Do you remember that when we were doing
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah,
When you
yeah.
told, I was like, you know what, far out. Every single time I walk past a stranger, I'm definitely afraid to hold eye contact, and I always look down like an absolute beta male. Not a beta male, but you know what I mean. It
I
was
know
just like,
what you mean.
I was like,
Yeah.
why am I afraid of this? You know, like, there is no. It was a completely irrational fear that kind of fed into my social anxiety, and I was like, man, you know what? Stuff this. And I just like radically started to do that to everyone. Just like started to stare everyone in the eyes. I was like, all right, I'm not gonna be the one breaking the eye contact. Not in any aggressive way as well. It's just like, oh, you know, I'm the one looking. I'm looking at you. You're looking at me. It's like, okay,
There's no
cool.
reason to be ashamed or like insecure about like this,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Um,
That was the negative emotion, right? And I was just like, man, like to really get over that was just got to jump myself into it. And it was so hard at first. It was so hard. But after the first few, I was like, oh, you know what? My irrational fear of someone bashing me because I stared at them too long is not actually true. No one's gonna really do that. And obviously, you know, there's nuance to everything, but I think, yeah, that really helped a lot. Yeah, it just kind of reminded me of that.
100%, dude. Um, so just jumping into the next point, do you want to
Mm.
go into the one you have here, Cal?
Oh, right, yeah. The other thing that I wanted to kind of like extend on from that though was this last point that I threw in, because I think it does relate to what we've just mentioned, but like accepting. So it says that accepting that we don't have the control over the things that happen to us, but then how we interpret those experiences. That has probably got to be a very empowering moment in the book for me as well. Just changing the whole dynamic of how you treat adversities in life, right? It's kind of putting that power back into your hands. It's like, and kind of, oh, you know what? And this touches on the biggest part of the book that really like shook me awake almost. And it was just him discussing like the whole victimhood mentality. I think that was 1000% my biggest awakening. Like reading about that part or hearing about that part and having him tell me about how a lot of the pains in my life come from the fact that I play the victim when in reality I am not the victim. And obviously he doesn't really antagonize you or the reader for doing this, right? He kind of explains why this is the case, right? Being the victim kind of takes you away from the responsibility, and like it kind of takes you away from the negative emotions and things like that. And it makes you feel special. I think that was one of the things that he mentioned. It was like there are like two ways to be special in life or something like that, and like playing the victim is like your shortcut to being special, right? You either work super hard and like devote your life to like some I don't know, art or some sport, and you become the best of the best, Michael Phelps, freaking LeBron James. Okay, you're special that way, right? That's a long and hard road. Or you can get the same special treatment, special attention that really feeds into my narcissism, right? If you just play the victim. And I was like, oh my. This was something that if one of my friends told me, I would probably break up with that friend. It's just too hard of a fact.
Start throwing
Too much of
hands.
a truth. Yeah.
In too deep,
I
man.
was like, no, no, no. Too confrontational for me. But that was huge. I was like, oh my God.
I was like,
I apologize to all the people in my life that like I've played a victim to, you know what I mean? But sorry, what were you gonna say, Justin?
I was just gonna agree that that point took me by such surprise, but it's so true. And I think he was saying as well that a lot of it is the product of our society. It's that we're deathly afraid of being mediocre, right? We always want to feel special. Yeah, we can't be average. You always want to be special, and you can be special by being the best, or you can be special by being the worst. But no
Yes.
one wants to be in the middle. So it's either like, you know what? Using that study example again. We keep coming back to academics, but okay, one good option is to be at the top of the grade, and then like, okay, I feel good, like I feel special. The other is like, oh, if I can't be at the top, then I may as well be at the bottom. Like I don't care about grades or like whatever, right? And then you can play
It's because
that
I'm
card,
not
or like,
putting in the
or
effort. Right.
it's because I'm not putting in the effort, or that no, I have something that prohibits me from doing my best.
Right.
So that's why I'm special, or like I just can't, like I'm just not smart enough or whatever. It's easier to play that card.
It's because this is happening, that happening to me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's things happening to me, and kind of like offloading that responsibility away from yourself. When in reality, you hold that responsibility in most of the cases, right? And I'm talking about this in a very. I'm not like talking about, oh, if you're the subject of systemic racism, and like we get, like I get, like this doesn't apply across the board. We're talking about I live in a very like middle class and stuff like that, so it
But
applies perfectly fine in this case.
but even on that, I think one big distinction he makes is that there's a difference between fault and responsibility, right?
Right.
Like and because like in our culture, it's so tied together. It's like, it's if you break something, it's your fault, and it's also your responsibility to fix it. So a
Right.
lot of times we see those as being one and the same, but they're actually two different things. And in your life, often there are things that happen to you that aren't your fault, right? Just say you get hit by a car, you're now a paraplegic. It's not your fault that happened to you. You didn't ask for it, like, but it's still your responsibility to live your life the best you can, even with that. Of course, it's like a terrible thing to
That's
happen.
fire.
Like
Yep.
something like I might be talking out my wheelhouse because nothing that horrific has happened to me. But like in that case, I still believe that it's your responsibility to live your life the best way you can. You can't just keep blaming, oh, this happened to me. Now I can't do all of these things that I wanted to do. I'm like the victim. And that's my life now. Like you just
Yeah.
suffer for the rest of your life. That's one option, or you can take
Yeah.
responsibility for it and be like, you know what, it's something that's happened to me, but I've just got to make the best of what I can. So that's just a little bit of a tangent, I guess, on that point that you were bringing up, Cal.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think the story that he tells is like very much along the lines of that. Remember, like who was the example that he used? Um, the guy who was like, I'm gonna kill myself after a year
Yeah,
if my
yeah,
life
yeah,
doesn't improve. And
yeah. It
he goes,
was
I'm gonna take responsibility for everything, right? Well, what was that?
I forget his name. It's like William James or something, but he was like people
Mm,
call him like the father of psychology, and I think the
right.
story went like he he had debilitating like medical issues that stopped him from like doing any physical work. He had a lot of trouble with just doing well conventionally. He just enjoyed like painting and stuff and felt like he was good at it, but his work didn't really sell. He failed out of medical school, and then he got to a point where he was like, you know what, I'm such a failure in life. I'm going to kill myself, but how about like I try 1 year where I take responsibility for everything that happens in my life, and and yeah, like by doing that, his life changed, and then he became like super successful, and then like made a real mark on the world.
Mm, yeah, I think that was what resonated with me really hard the first time I listened to it, and I think that was kind of my step into what I felt like adulthood for myself, like the maturity. Like I finally progressed to the level of maturity that I believe is what an adult, or what I think an adult should have, and that was just learning to take responsibility. And I guess having lived my life for so long, playing the victim for so long, always kind of like offloading a lot of my failures, not because of me, it's because of this happened to me, because of that happened to me, and being so used to that, I was like, you know what, I think I had to go through like a radical phase as well. And maybe I didn't spend the whole year, but definitely after listening to the book the first time, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna, every issue I run into, it'll be my fault. Let's just start there. And that was such a simple change in my life, and I think that was so effective. And don't want to call Kelly out, but I think a lot of the things like, when you date when you're young, like freaking Kelly was did not realize what she got herself into when she dated me, like in freaking high school. Like she kind of signed on to a man child. You know what I mean? Like someone
Oh
who did
no.
not have the proper maturity, and like that would pretty much play victim the whole time, and I would give her the worst time ever, because anything that would happen, whether it was truly my fault or her fault, it would always be at her about it. But it helped me so much in that regard, where it was like, you know what, whatever happens, I'm gonna take responsibility for it. And like, although it felt like I was doing myself a disservice, I was like, doesn't that feel like you're giving yourself the short end of the stick kind of thing, whatever, right? But in reality, like, there was so much growth from that, and I think there was so much. Now looking back, it's crazy, like, to even look back to our relationship a few years ago, when I didn't have that ability to take responsibility. But yeah, like, that was huge for me. Just realizing, having someone tell me, "Hey, you're playing the victim." I know it feels good to be playing the victim, but it's not doing you any good. And I think having heard that, wow, that was the biggest thing for me, man. That blew my mind, and I just learning to take that responsibility from here on out. And I'm not perfect. I don't think anyone would be perfect in this regard as well. Sometimes like you default back once in a while, and you're like, you kind of just go, oh my god, why is this happening to me? And sometimes you have like a bad week where, like, I don't know, like bad experience after bad experience just compounds. You're like, this is very unfair. But then you realize, like, there is no productivity, or there is no improvement from realizing that you are the victim. There's only an improvement from kind of taking on how you respond to those to those experiences, I guess. And that comes back to what we were saying before, right? So understanding that, oh, the fault responsibility thing, right? Just things happen to you, yeah, okay, that's one thing, but how you respond is another. And you know what's crazy? I wanted to bring up this quote, and this is so cheesy, but it's crazy how it stuck with me. Back when I was an intern at the small software company, we'd have stand-ups, and the CEO would have stand-up with us, would participate in the stand-ups with us as well. and I think one week she was like, "Oh, like let's go around and share something." I think it was just, I don't know what it was, but share something that I don't know, maybe we learned over the weekend or something like that. Something completely like irrelevant. It was just like a side thing. And one of the other interns was like, "Oh, I stumbled across this quote and I thought it was really cool. I wanted to share with you guys." And honestly, the quote was so fire. It was like, it's so cheesy, but I looked up and it's just like from some Instagram post or something like that. It was so cheesy. But I honestly think it's so fun. Let me share it with you guys. Let me see what you guys think. All right. Don't judge me on this because it's stuck with me. After 2 years, it's still stuck with me. It's crazy.
I'm
I'm like, what
excited
the
now,
hell,
man.
man?
What's this quote?
But the quote goes a little something like, you don't have control over your first thought, but you have control over your second. And I think
Ooh.
that like just is so important to me because I think when I was first introduced to the idea of like stoicism, right, and being non-reactionary, don't react to things, I thought having the reaction in my mind was bad and I would shame myself for having the reaction. But that's not the case, is it? It's how you control and how you then interpret that like situation and then how you think about it after. I think that's kind of where you want to put your energy, right? And I think this quote was so awesome because it's like it's at the same time making sure that you forgive yourself for having that first reaction, that first thought, because that's reactionary. That's okay, right? But the second thought comes, you have control over that, and you need to make sure that you think about things and you kind of approach it positively, right? And I think, oh,
Yo,
fire up, man.
that's
He
fire.
brought it up. I
Yeah,
was just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
bro, what the hell, this guy? It's like 8 in the morning, bro. Why you hit me with this crazy fire inspirational quote? It's stuck with me.
And
It's been like a year and a half, and it's still stuck with me.
and just as like a concrete example of like how I'm like understanding this quote, right? Just say you go to a party and then you have like you get a lot of social anxiety, like all these feelings pop up. That's your first thought. That's the thing that you don't have control over.
Yeah.
And but your second thought is like you can shame yourself like, oh, why am I like this? Why am I such an introvert? Why am I like whatever? Why can't I be charismatic?
100%. Yeah.
Or your second thought could be, you know what, that's okay. Like it's okay to be anxious. Let's still do the best that I can, like to whatever extent that is. Maybe I'll just say hi to one person, or I'll like act despite this feeling of anxiety or fear. And that's what you have control over. It's that second thought. It's that reaction to your initial thought that you have control over. Being like
Yeah.
like another thing that it's another cheesy quote that stuck with me as well, is that courage is not feeling fear. It's being able to to act despite feeling fear. And I think it
That's
touches on the
fine.
same idea.
Yeah, definitely. And like it applies in so many different contexts as well. You know what I mean? Like for me, I think growing up, I had a lot of a lot of anger issues. Um, do you remember Michael Lee from
I do, yeah.
high school, Justin?
Yeah, I do.
I went to preschool with him.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, he annoyed me for some reason when we were like 5 years old. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I shouted at him or something. And then after preschool, he came to my mum, and then he dobbed on my mum. He was like, Cal's being mean to me. And then I was like, that's just the way I am. I'm an angry person. I used to like that. That was kind of my, when I was a kid, I knew very early on that I was an angry person. I had anger issues.
Just an angry
All the way
kid.
back in preschool. Yeah. I was an absolute shithead, but like, and I don't know, it was just, I was terrible, right? And I think learning to kind of grow beyond that wasn't shaming yourself into feeling angry, right? It wasn't that, hey, you're not supposed to feel angry. You're not supposed to feel angry. Don't feel angry. Because I remember doing that for so long, and then kind of realizing that wouldn't help at all. It's like, why is this not working? I feel like I feel worse than before, right? Now every time I feel angry, I'm angry. I can't control it, and I
You're
also feel
angry
like
that you got
terrible.
angry.
Exactly. And then what is that? The negative feedback loop from hell, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's one of the chapters as well. And you just spiral down into this absolute mess, right? And so I think hearing that quote and kind of getting to that point where it's like, hey, you have like, it's like detaching yourself almost from your brain. And I think this is a concept that came up in like one of the meditation episodes. I've been watching that meditation kind of series on Netflix, and they were describing how it's like kind of like visualizing your brain slightly differently and kind of detaching yourself from it. And that's one way of meditating and kind of like not being carried away by your emotions and being very forgiving as well. It's like, yes, you have these thoughts and these ideas, but it's like you are not your thoughts. That was the thing. Oh my god, bro, you are not your thoughts. It's like, yeah, you can have these thoughts, but that doesn't define you, right? And I think that gave me so much power to then kind of grow beyond and kind of push beyond like my anger issues or whatever it was that I was trying to deal with. And I think in general, I'm an extremely sensitive person, sensitive to like, I know it's terrible, but sensitive to like feedback. I did not learn how to take feedback well until very late in my life. And I think I was so frustrated at myself. I was like, why was I so reactionary, right? I wish I was like other people. I wish I was like more like my stoic friends, my friends who were just chill. You know, we have a couple friends who are like very cool. You know, like those type of people. And I'm like, I respect the crap out
Yeah.
of you because I love that about you. Like, I wish I had more of that in my life. You know what I mean? Because for me, it's more so like, what did you say? What? Like, kind of that kind of
What?
reactionary mind. It's like, what? He didn't do this, or he looked at my way, or he glared at me. Oh my god, he hates me, or like just like crazy, what is it, neuroticism almost, I think, right? And I think I see a lot of my friends who didn't feel like they reacted very much to certain situations. They were very mellow, and I was like, I need to be more like that. And my first approach was stop having reactions, and it just got me nowhere. Just me trying to shut off that side of my brain got me nowhere. I did not improve at all. I made my life honestly worse, if anything. And then realizing that, kind of like learning to forgive yourself for those reactions, and then learning to focus on the next step. How are you going to react from this, right? Or how are you going to interpret that initial thought? So yeah, I just wanted to share that quote. I thought it was very relevant in this case. I thought it was super fire. Something that stuck with me for so long. I don't even remember his name, but I remember the quote that he mentioned in the one stand. I'm so sorry to that other unknown intern name. I'm sorry, dude, but that was a fire quote. Yeah.
And it's such a like I feel like it's such a fundamentally like deep idea, and like I guess my empirical evidence for that is that this idea appears both in Buddhism and also in Stoicism, like two like philosophies of living your life that arrived in completely different areas of the world. And I think the reason it arose in both is because it's just correct. It's just like a truth of the human experience. So from the Stoic perspective, it's like, yeah, you're gonna feel bad, you're gonna feel negative emotions, but you have control over how you react to that. Like you can just be completely stoic about it. It's like, okay, this hits me. Like I feel extremely angry. I feel extremely hurt, but I'm going to not be, if my actions will not reflect that. I still have control
Yes.
over my actions, even though I don't have control over my emotions, right? Whereas from the Buddhist perspective, it's very similar. A quote that I remember is, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional, right? It's like, yeah, you're gonna feel
Bro,
terrible.
man,
You're
that man
gonna,
Buddha was fire, bro.
dude,
Spitting
that
bars.
guy's pretty wise, bro. That guy's pretty wise.
Bro, so wise. That's fire. Pain. Oh, dude. I gotta write that one down, man. Damn. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
like you're gonna feel bad in your life, right? But you have control over whether you or not you're gonna just keep stewing over it. You're gonna just keep looping back to it, or you can just let it hit you and move on with your life.
I like that. I like that idea that, and I'm a big fan of it. I don't know how true it is out there, but I honestly do also believe that there are like universal truths out there that that you can kind of see in a lot of these philosophies, and that we're all kind of growing towards and hoping towards the right direction. Um, but that was just like an interesting thing because I've been reading on like moral relativism and like all these like crazy philosophical ideas. And yeah, I think universal truths, there's definitely a lot of them out there. And like we've definitely touched on some of them just now. But yeah, that was just a quick quote that I just wanted to share. Something that's really touched me for a very long time. um, but yeah, what else do we have here to touch on?
So I'll move on to my next point, which is another a quote from the book itself. Actually, a lot of quotes this episode, but this quote is: "Don't hope for a life without problems. There's no such thing. Instead, hope for a life full of good problems." And this book's just amazing. Like Oh, listen to the
Serious.
audiobook as well, by the way. I think I should have prefaced this in the beginning, but the audiobook is amazing, right? The voice actor is super good. And it's very it's a very easy listen. So if you're not a big reader, listen to the audiobook. It's so good. But yeah, this quote
Very animated.
come very animated. But this quote, it comes from the book itself, and I don't know. It's just such a fundamentally good, better way to like think about your life. Because I think growing up, me personally, I always wished for like, oh, I just wish like I didn't have like all these problems in my life, right? I just want a life where I can just do whatever I want. I could just play games all day. Like, why do I have all these problems? And I would just
Yeah.
fantasize about a life without problems. But it's a really immature exercise, I think, to like kind of really hope for a life like that, because reality is going to hit you. You're not going to have a life without problems. No matter how you live your life, no matter like what you do, your life is going to have problems. And I think that's exemplified by the story of the Buddha, right? I think it was something along the lines of his dad was he was a king or something, and then
Yeah.
he was like, you know what, I'm gonna make it so my child doesn't have any problems in their life. They're going to be completely sheltered from the terrors of the world. But growing up, the Buddha was like, he felt, I think it was like he felt hollow. He didn't feel that his life was fulfilling at all. So he kind of went, because when he saw like the outside world, it's okay, there's all this suffering, there's all these problems, and he feels like he was robbed of that, right? Because suffering makes you grow. It makes you just, I think, move further, I guess, in
Mm.
as a person.
Mm.
But I'm sure I'm paraphrasing. I'm sure the book explains it a
No,
lot better
no,
than I
I
do.
think you're pretty spot on.
Yeah.
The story
Okay.
itself, I think I learned very young as well. So that was really cool to hear it again. Him tell the story in such an interesting context. Like this such an edgy book, and then he starts to retell the story of the Buddha, right? Which I don't think he leads off. He kind of tells the story. He just kind of tells it ambiguously, and then he kind of reveals at the end that this is the story of the Buddha. And I learned this super young when I used to go to Buddhist school, so it was a really interesting story to me.
So
But
you would have been listening to it. It's like, wait a minute, I know this guy. I
yeah,
know
I
this
already knew.
story.
Like, I was very switched on.
Yeah.
The second he said
Yeah.
like this prince was sheltered by the king, I was like, all right, I know who you're talking about. Like, I know who you're talking about. And then like this whole journey of then seeing suffering and being exposed to the real world and realizing that the world is full of suffering. He goes on like his whole journey to try to find the solution, right? And he's like try to look for enlightenment, and he tries so many different things, right? There are so many. The full story goes like, I remember he says something like. He one of the methods was to then plunge himself into suffering. So he lived like a life where he would just punish himself through pain, through like starving himself, and he thought that was maybe the solution out of like the suffering in life, just to kind of put yourself through all of it, right? And then obviously after a while he realized that wasn't the case, and he kind of changed philosophies, and then he sat under the tree and then became enlightened and all those things. And this is your 10-second recap of a very deep story, a deep retelling of like the Buddha's life. So I apologize for doing a crazy disservice, but it's so paradoxical, to then be told that, hey, when you want to live your life full of happiness, you need to find a life full of problems. Not any problems, but it will be still full of problems. Problems that you want, right? Problems that you are willing to tolerate. Holy, that was huge as well. My God, man. Like, this book was just big revelation after big revelation. And I was gonna say the exact same thing. It felt, now looking back, it feels so immature to think the way that we thought, right? It was very much immature. I don't know where we got it from, but I feel like it's very much like a kid thing. We thought as a child, like, man, my life would be amazing if I didn't have problems. It's like, no, you're never not gonna have problems, mate. Like, it will just be replaced by other problems, right? Your problems will be done. There'll be a new set of problems around next week, and your life is not gonna get better. And I think some of the recent experiences that I've had, like sometimes when I have like crazy deadlines and I'm like stressed the heck out, I'm like, this deadline is next week, right? I think a lot of people immediately kind of feel, oh, once this deadline's over, I'm gonna feel amazing. Life is gonna be full, like, awesome, right? I think I've gone through enough of those cycles where I'm like, oh, my life doesn't get better after the deadline. The life still sucks.
Oh, you're hitting too close to
You
home,
know what I
Cal, right
mean?
now.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But like straight up, like, and so after enough of those cycles, like after enough of like going through finals and being, you know what, after the finals, I'll be happy. It's like, oh, I'm not happy after the finals. And I think after enough of those cycles, I've just come to every time I get that initial thought where I'm like, oh, if I get past this week, I'll be happy. Every time I get that reaction now, I
Catch
immediately like
yourself.
kind of take a moment. I catch myself, yeah, definitely, and I go, you know what? Let me learn to enjoy this moment because these are the problems that I'm gonna have, and there is no part of my life where I'm problem free. So what the hell am I thinking like, right? So I'm having learned that it was huge because now like when I am like going through these adversities, I think it gives me that power to kind of interpret it in a much more positive way and like really enjoy every moment of my life, not just enjoying the highlights, right? I'm really enjoying the process, enjoying the struggles as well as the stress. I remember there was one time we had like some kais and stuff and I was super stressed. And I remember mentioning to you, I was like, dude, like last week I was full stressed out, but I was kind of grateful that I was stressed out. I was like, I was kind of happy that, I don't know if you remember me telling you this, but I was
I
like,
don't remember.
it was so weird. Like I was stressed, but then I had like a moment of clarity where I was like, I'm very grateful for this stress. This stress means that I'm doing something in my life and that I was being productive, that I was working towards something, that I was moving forward. And like I've yet to kind of build that whole moment of clarity into my life. Like it still comes up just like flashes here and there, but I remember just like that week I was like it was so stressful, but then I had just a moment to kind of think about it. I was like, wow, like I'm actually leaning into these negative emotions, and it made me like so much more appreciative of just like the smaller things in life, and it made me so much more happier in the long term, you know. And I think that's exactly what we've been trying to get across. That's the thing that this book is really all about, man.
That was one of the like biggest. I keep saying like, oh, this is like such a big takeaway, and it's because this book is all like just chock filled with like all of these like life changing like revelations. So this one in particular like was a big one for me, right? Like you always have this feeling like oh you're on the hedonic treadmill, right? You're constantly working for like
Oh,
the next win, the next hill. I just got to finish high school. I just got to finish uni. I just got to
yeah.
get a job. I've just got to like do this. I just got to solve this health problem and then I'll be happy. No, that's not the case. You're never going to be happy if you're always chasing something. You're,
Mm.
you've got to learn to, maybe happy is the wrong word to describe it, but you've got to learn to be at peace with whatever's happening like right at this moment, right? You could be experiencing a lot of turmoil, but you can still be at peace with it. You
Mm.
can still, it takes a lot of practice, I think, a lot of meditation, but you can be at peace no matter what your experience is. Um,
That's such a Buddhist like idea as well. You know what I mean? That's crazy. Like when I was young, I was taught this stuff, but it didn't really kind of get through my head. And now, like you're older, you revisit this stuff, and it's like being at peace. I used to think it was so silly when I was young. I was like, being at peace, what the hell are you on about?
I just want
But
to have
now it's like,
fun. I play
yeah,
some
yeah,
games.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. But it's like, wow, like as I get older, like I'm really trying to make sure that I live my life the way that I really want to, like effectively, right, efficiently, and like so yeah, like being at peace with whatever it is that like whatever phase I am in life. It's not gonna be perfect, you know. We're not all Zen Buddhist monks out here, so we can't live every single moment 24/7, 365 at peace. But I think just slowly learning to be at peace with the struggles and some of the harder days, I think that's a step forward, right? Especially when you're having like those days where you just really want to lash out or you really want to just disconnect and escape into a movie, escape into a game or something like that. And instead being at peace with what you have in that moment, I think that's really takes a lot of courage, a lot of practice, but I think there's a lot of just so much. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to use the word happiness, but just so much fulfillment, I guess, to be found there. Like, just makes your experience through life so much more wholesome, so much more meaningful as well. Um,
I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant as well. This is a
mm,
completely tangential point, but it's related to
far
this, I
away,
guess. But
far away.
it's an attitude I see a lot on Reddit. I'm going to rant about Reddit a bit because I feel
Nihilism.
like, oh no, it's more about like it's related to this idea of like problems. It's like often I see like, ooh, like this guy's like super rich. Like, what right does he have to rant about his problem? Like, my problems are worse. And then
Oh, okay,
it's
yeah.
like this kind of attitude of thinking that, oh, okay, people who I guess it's like a common thought. It's like, okay, people who are rich don't have any problems at all, and it's like it's celebrities like don't have any problems at all, and it's a bit of an
Mm.
immature thought. I'm sure not everyone on Reddit thinks like that, right? But it's just
Yeah.
there's a like so you just see a comment here and there, and then it just really irks you. But
Mm.
just because someone has a lot of money, right, it doesn't mean all of their problems are solved. They've just traded in like some like problems for other problems, and no matter what, even if you're just a regular person in a like in a first world country, I don't know if that's in a developed country, sorry, that's the
Mm.
proper terminology nowadays. um your problems are nothing compared to people who are in developing countries, or just say a century ago, right? These people were like, maybe like 2 centuries ago, people were like, yo, like, why are you worrying about exams and stuff? I'm
Yeah.
literally here starving to death. I'm gonna die if I don't catch like a rabbit or something in the next like
Yeah.
few hours. Like, what,
Yeah.
like, again, the same argument can be made. What right do you have to be complaining about the problems you're facing? Or like someone
Oh.
has a terminal illness, and then they can have the same argument of like, yo, like, what right do you have to be complaining about like all of your friends turning on you and
I'm
backstabbing
literally
you?
dying.
I'm literally
Right.
dying right now, right? That argument doesn't hold, because there's always someone who has worse problems
The
than you.
worst.
There's
Yeah.
always going to be people who have better problems than you. And rather than making a value judgment on like my problems are worse, or like, or whatever, I think it's good to just accept that everyone has problems, and that the way to approach them is just like accepting that and being happy despite your problems, because no matter how far
Mm.
you make it in your life, or you're gonna have problems. No matter how bad you get, you can still deal with these emotions, by just being at peace with the moment. So yeah, that's just a little bit of a rant I wanted to go on.
I get you. It's like you can't discredit someone else's experience, and I think it's really important to. Oh, look, it's gonna be hard because I'm a. I think it's. I get where you're coming from, and it's everyone deserves like, you know, eh, deserves their own set of problems, and understanding that no one lives problem free is kind of like it gives you a bit more empathy when you look at other people instead of just kind of going about going, yeah, like, how dare you this, how dare you that, I'm here, I'm there. Because honestly, that's the same thing that we were talking about before. All you're doing in that moment is you're playing victim, and we've come to the realization that when you play victim, you get nowhere, like quite literally nowhere, right? And so in that case, yeah, I totally get that sentiment. Um, it's interesting, but like, no, you know what? Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. It's cool. It's cool. It's
Cool, cool,
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to.
Especially us. I think we live in such like a. I mean, we're quite privileged in ourselves, right? So it's like a lot of the problems that we tend to kind of talk about. It's just like, what the hell, bro? Straight first world problem stuff. Like, are you serious? Are you complaining over this, over that? It's like, yeah, I get it, but it's like this is my life, okay, and I'm still stressing through these things, and they're still absolutely destroying me mentally, okay. But yeah, um, I think understanding that the problem part of your life is never going away, that really changes your whole definition on, or changes like your whole motivation. I think we are no longer striving for the same thing. Before I heard that quote, or before I read that line, I was striving for something extremely different, and now I think I'm striving for something. It's like complete 180. You know what I mean? Like, it's so different now. It's changed my whole perspective. And like, I think this is the next thing that I wanted to touch on was just like, honestly, they all relate to one another, but this is, I thought, was just a fire thing that he said. But this idea of when you kind of pursue positive experiences, or pursue a more positive experience, or say like you live your life and as you live your life, all you do is yearn for better things. Look at kind of like the grass is always greener on the other side kind of thing. That idea, looking for a more positive experience, is in itself a negative experience. Oh my god, bro, that's so fire. Are you serious? And I think that was so big for me because every time I would like, look, I always I guess I'm always I really like I know I think whenever you consume any media, you're always shown like someone who has it better. And I think if you don't regulate that stimulus when you're consuming it, and you just kind of chomp away and just eat through this media and just go, oh, look at this guy, he's got a Lamborghini, look at this guy, he's got a Ferrari, and just keep consuming that media like without thinking, like without having a second thought, I think you can get yourself into a pretty terrible position. And I found myself, when I've been thoughtless in consuming that kind of media, I've made myself feel so shit. Like looking and watching like all these like high rollers, like I mean these ballers and like these like rich people, and it's like kind of thinking and imagining a life where I did have that stuff and kind of playing into that fantasy. And I remember like anytime I would play into that fantasy, I would feel terrible. And I was like, and hearing this was like, oh, this is why, right? And the other thing that he says was, the second you pursue something, it reinforces the fact that you lack it in the first place. Oh my god, man. Come on. Like that was just eye-opening for me. And so then learning to appreciate whatever it is that you have, right? And these are the things that we've already talked about. But yeah, that was just really helpful for me. Making sure that, honestly, it's just like, I think he also mentions things like how, you know, nowadays we're always shown like the extremes. We're always shown, freaking, you're not shown average people, right? We don't glorify average people in like mainstream media. No one's like, oh my god, look at this guy, he's got an amazing job, 80k salary, like whatever it is, superannuation, healthcare included, whatever, right? But instead we're showing like, oh, look at this guy, he's a billionaire. Like, oh, look at this guy's making like $1 trillion. And so it's so hard to kind of keep your mind in check when you kind of hear about these stories, to make sure that, you know, you're kind of comfortable with just being average. Oh yeah, this is something that we were talking about before, but I completely forgot to mention. I think it's just a really big thing for this book, for me especially, was just learning to be average. Hey, it's okay to be average, man. I think growing up, I was a part of like a lot of high achiever classes, and I think I was told by a lot of teachers, oh,
Special
Cal, you're
float stuff
special.
like.
Yeah, you are special and you're going to do great things. And I, like, you know, we can't hold them against it. Like, I know it was all in good spirit, but I was talking to Kelly about this the other night, and I was like, has that done more damage to me than any good? And I feel like it has, man. Like,
Oh no.
them telling me like, oh my god, Cal, you're so special, you're better than other people, that has done so much damage to me, because I've held on to this extremely toxic idea that one day I'm gonna be the next Elon Musk, Bill Gates, or something like that. And it's like, you know, to some degree it's nice to have like this awesome drive, motivation to work harder and all these other things, but it's like, there will be a point in life where you hit, and you realize, no, that's not going to be true, and you're going to have to wrestle with the fact that you're going to be average. And I was taught that being average was so terrible, and I was deathly afraid of being average, when in reality, it's like there is so much to appreciate about being in the position that I am that I am in, right? And being mediocre. And so yeah, just making sure that you kind of remind yourself that often, because that's not something that we're told often. I think we're told too often that, oh, look at this guy, he's like, he had $2 to his name and now he's a trillionaire, and you can be the next trillionaire too. And it's like, oh, come on, please don't fall into those traps. Like, just because he hustled and grind like 24/7, he's now a trillion. It's like, come on, man, like, be happy with what you have, you know, and you'll find so much fulfillment in that. But yeah, that was a huge, and I know it sounds so narcissistic and like that I have a massive ego, or I had a massive ego, but I did. It's like, it honestly put me through an existential crisis coming out of high school, realizing that, oh my god, I'm not going to be special, having been told I was special for so many damn years. And I was like, what kind of mental damage and trauma did they do to me? And look, like I said, I don't hold anything against them.
Hello, slight technical issues. We're back. And I guess let's just finish off with our or one last point I wanted to talk about, Cal, which was like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
final
go for it.
chapter. I think I've mentioned that it's like one of my favorite chapters, and it's about death.
Mm.
It's about our recognizing your own mortality, and I found it to be one of the most practical chapters, because it actually drives a lot of my decisions. Right, whenever I have a big decision, whenever I'm unsure about something or unsure about what I want to do, then thinking about death puts a lot of things into perspective. Like, I'm going to die someday, or like, if I died next year, would I be okay with that? Would I feel like I would have a lot of regret in my life, or would I feel like, oh no, I'd be pretty okay with it? It's like, it is what it is, kind of thing. And I think that's a
Yeah.
very good metric to measure how you're living your life right now. So if you're gonna like have a lot of regrets if you were to die very soon, because you don't know when you're gonna die,
Mm.
then you should probably change some things up in your life. You should let go of some things that turns out that don't really matter to you, and you should hold dearer the things that do matter to you. And I think that kind of, as an example, right? I've always had the idea of, oh, you know what would be really cool? Moving to like Silicon Valley or something, and like having a big adventure.
Mm.
Um, that would be like a really cool thing. But I think I've come to the realization that that actually isn't something that matters to me all that much. If I were to die and never go on, like never live abroad, never like do something like
Mm.
super cool like that, I'd be pretty okay. But if I were to die and then I felt like I didn't spend enough time with family, didn't spend enough
Oh.
time with friends, or didn't build enough meaningful relationships in my life, then I would really regret it. That's something that I would not be happy about, I guess, like when I'm
Yeah.
on my deathbed. So I guess a way that has driven my decisions is that it's made me realize that I care about building a lot of relationships or like networks. And what
Mm.
that means is living in one place for a very long time. It's not being like a bit of a not being a nomad, not being a
Mm.
digital nomad. You know, that idea of like, oh, you can work wherever, like just by doing it online, live in one city for a while, then move to another city. Wow, that sounds really cool. I've kind of like just by in like a bit of introspection, thinking about death, it kind of puts into perspective that okay, that's not what I care about deep down. And yeah,
Right.
like just regularly doing that, like, oh, if I'm gonna like just say career choice, right? It's like I have the option of doing this business, or whether I need to like choose this career path or that degree, right? On my deathbed, which one would I feel more regret for? Then that's the one that I shouldn't, or like whichever path leads to the least regret
Mm.
when I die is the right path. And I've generally, anecdotally, felt like that's true. Like
Mm.
whenever I've followed this is a decision, this decision like algorithm, I guess,
Yeah.
my life generally is more fulfilling. I feel more
He
confident. I feel just happier, more fulfilled.
Right. Yeah, I think he talks about like something similar in his own experience too, right? He was a digital nomad for like a while, Mr. Mark Manson, in like the later chapters, and he talks about exactly that, like the chase for a larger breadth, a wider experience, will be sacrificed for a more shallow experience,
That's
right?
fire. Yeah.
And I remember you were describing this to me before as well when we were talking about it's, what were we talking about? Like, just going to places. We were like,
Travel. Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. I remember this.
traveling,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you're like, stuff this. I don't want to. I'm not about trying to just experience like 2% of every single country in the world. I'm trying to experience 100% of Japan. So I'm just gonna go back to Japan, and that's exactly it, isn't it? It's like you're trying to develop deeper relationships or just deeper experiences, right? I don't know why. Where does that come from, eh? Like that, there is like this panic of, oh, I need to try everything in my life, because I think I have that feeling sometimes as well, and like sometimes it does drive me to try too many things, and yeah, he describes in his relationship, or sorry, in his book, like about so many of his experiences where it was like career choices, and even in his relationships, right, where he was kind of like a bit of a womanizer for a while, and like he didn't really learn to commit and then kind of after a while learning to commit, finding so much like depth and meaning in that relationship in itself, and then realizing that's the thing that you miss when you kind of jump and hop around like relationships, or jump and hop around places that you live and careers and stuff like that, right? So yeah, I think that's a really big point as well. But the other hard thing though is definitely like death is something that we're not, I think a majority of us out there are not very familiar with. And growing up, it's a pain, but slowly you'll start to learn about it more and more. I don't know, I've always found that part hard though, because it's like, yeah, think about death, think about it, and like it definitely puts a lot of things into perspective. But I don't know how it is to then get everyone on the same page. You know what I mean? Like it took me a long time to kind of get into the mindset of what my mortality truly is, and then what kind of regrets would I actually have on my deathbed. I think it took me a long time to get to that point. I think for me, exactly the same as you, like I was thinking, for me, I remember last year I was thinking like, oh my God, the stresses of career choices, or I was thinking of what kind of decisions should I make to kind of propel my professional career forward. Which one will be most beneficial to my professional career? Which one will get me to a manager the quickest, or to a high ranking position in that ladder, right? And that was really stressing me out. And then I realized I didn't really care for that at all, to be honest. Or I could die the next day, and I wouldn't really care if I chose the wrong decision and it held me back in like a junior role for an extra year. I honestly wouldn't care. And I realized after a lot of thinking, I think the same happened like with your train of thought, Justin. I thought the biggest regret would be if I did my parents wrong, if I did my family wrong, if I didn't live by them, and if I didn't kind of fulfill my filial duties to some regard, right? And that was a huge part for me. Because for me now, I'm like, honestly, like I'm definitely thinking about what my next steps and my career should be like, and I'm thinking about it strategically, but I'm not putting too much stress on it, because as long as it can feed me, it can feed my family, I think I'm really happy. And I think that is so much more important than any kind of like selfish, oh, I need to climb this corporate ladder as quickly as I can kind of thing. Not really selfish. It was just like, that kind of motivation. I realized after a while that wasn't my motivation. That was something that maybe I kind of picked up from somewhere. But yeah, thinking about death is. Yeah, have you seen the clip, Justin, of Gary V that's floating around?
What's the clip?
You're familiar with Gary V, right?
Yeah, I know
remember
Gary
you were
V,
talking
yeah.
about him. He's a bit intense sometimes. And so one of the clips is like, it's kind of taken a bit out of context, but it's really funny, where it's like, it's from one of his talks, and he's like doing a motivational speech, and he's talking about how every day he wakes up and he thinks about his family members, and he thinks about very vividly his family members getting shot in the face and dying.
I can imagine you just like
So
take that clip and it's like,
yes,
oh, okay. This guy's a
yeah, yeah.
psycho.
Yeah, no, that's literally the freaking the running joke that the internet's kind of like gone with now that the clip's kind of floating around. It's just like, this guy is real intense. Like, it's a bit too intense. But it's funny because he's so serious and angry. I think about my family, and I think about every morning I wake up, I think they're shot in the face. I was like, oh my Lord. It's funny because it's like, yes, death is very important, and thinking about it, with a level head, right, and taking time to think about it introspectively, and it can help make decisions. I think it's a really good, I guess when you're stuck, you're at like the crossroads, or you're at a fork in a road in your life, you always come back to what are the most important values. And whenever you ask about your mortality, you will kind of come back to your most important values, the values you hold closest to yourself, right? It's kind of like a company even, right? A company has a really strong mission statement, kind of like values that they kind of they follow. And I think no matter how large a company grows, successful companies will always come back to those first few values that they set, right? And they kind of like, if they're stuck on a really hard decision, they ask themselves, what do we set out to do? All right, this is what we set out to do, so this is what we're going to do. And that will always make it so much easier to kind of tackle these harder decisions in life. But yeah, death, very important, but don't get carried away. You know what I mean? He's like, you got to imagine the shot in the face, and it's just like so vivid. Like, why are you so
Every
grotesque
morning,
about this?
every morning you wake up like,
Legit, like, what the hell? So intense. But that was just a funny clip. I thought it was relevant.
yeah. Ah,
Oh
all right.
man.
Well, as a closing thought, read the book, listen to the book, whatever your whatever works for you. But this is like probably one of probably the book that has made the biggest difference in my life. It was literally a life-changing book for me. Um, so I would highly recommend you give it a try if you're listening.
100%. Like, it's such good value, man. And after reading a few more books, a few more books in the same genre, right? You find that this book does cover a lot of the like universal truths that you need to hear, and that you will find in a lot of the other books as well. Like, you know, whenever I come back to this after hearing, say, or after listening to like Essentialism, and after listening to Atomic Habits, you know, they're not carbon copies, but you're definitely getting like a lot of the same ideas kind of repackaged. Not saying that any of these books are like redundant, because I honestly, after hearing all of these, I'm like a big fan of all of them. But yeah, this one is a good value book, you know, a good entry point as well. It really hits on a lot of these ideas, and it's super accessible. Don't take the title too literally. It's not that edgy, right? It's actually very, I think, very grounded. I think that's the part that I really enjoy. It's just really grounded, as opposed to some of these other ones. They're a bit more complex, a bit more heavy, kind of a bit higher barrier of entry in terms of like vocabulary. This one, nah, you know, he keeps it simple, a lot of simple words, and I really enjoyed that. So I think, yeah, really nice entry point.
And it's valuable for everyone is one thing that I like. Like, you may not care about productivity, you may not care about minimalism or whatever, right? But this book, it's about values, and everyone would benefit from reading it, I think. But yeah, to finish
Facts.
off, let's go with our song recommendations for the week. Or sorry, for the episode. We don't do weekly
Yeah.
podcasts. So what was your one, Cal?
I'll be listening to. I haven't actually been freed from my K-pop reigns yet, so I'm just
Yeah,
still
yeah.
listening to a lot of K-pop. But the new Twice song is really
I don't know if
an absolute
I don't know if
win.
it's a phase anymore, Cal. I think it's just part of your
It's
identity.
just me.
Yeah.
It is my identity now. Yeah. Oh, that's a it's a hard pill to swallow, but I'll come around to it. I think, yeah, it's not a phase. I don't know though. You know what? Look. This is my rebuttal to that. I'm
Okay,
just
okay.
catching up. Okay, I imagine myself catching up, because I think a lot of people had a head start in the K-pop game. You know what I mean? They were listening back like in year 7, which I did not do. So I'm just kind of making up for the missed out years, right? Might be a phase, but you know, maybe
So
not.
it's just part of it's. This is how I'm looking at it. It's part of your character, part of your musical taste, maybe like 30%. But right now it's over-indexing because you're catching up.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
I would definitely say it's over-indexed, as you would say. Yes, that's exactly it. All right, Justin. Well, what do we got this week, bro?
So for me, it's a song called Satisfaction. It's from the musical Hamilton. It's playing in Sydney at the moment. I went to see it, and oh my goodness, so good, so good. So, what the reason I like this song in particular, it's a very poppy song. So I think one of the gimmicks, I guess, of Hamilton is that it brings a lot of modern music and a lot of modern dance to the musical genre. That's not to say that, like, the story itself is amazing. All of the characters aren't shallow. They have a lot of depth to them. But I guess that's one thing that's really cool about it. It brings a lot of modern, very modern feel to the musical. And Satisfaction is just a very poppy song. I tend to like pop songs quite a bit, and this one like just hits really deep. And I really like the story behind the song. It's a very I found
Hit us with
that
hit us
particular
with the history.
storyline very interesting. So I don't know. I don't think it's historically accurate, but what it
Oh.
essentially talks about is it's okay. So this is spoilers. Shut your ears if you care about getting spoilers from
Close it right
Hamilton. Yeah, close your ears right now. Turn this shit off. Turn this shit off. We have nothing else to talk
Alright.
about anyway. But
Yeah.
this song follows. So there was a song right before it, and it's about how there's these three sisters, and the second one marries the main character of the play, Alexander Hamilton. But then right after that, so that song was sung by the second sister, but then the first song, this song after that, is sung by the oldest sister, and it kind of looks at the events from a very from the same events but from a different perspective. And it turns out that she also like had a thing for Alexander Hamilton, and like it seemed like they were a better match, but then she pushed him to get with her sister instead because of all of these like reasons, like because that she was the oldest in the family, she had to like marry for status and stuff like that. And just kind of like that interplay kind of took me off guard, because right before it was just a like very happy song of like these two people falling in love and whatever, but this one kind of just threw a different spin on it.
Undercuts everything.
Undercuts everything. Yeah.
That's fire. That's fire. Gotta go watch it, man. This is like a paid sponsor almost.
Yeah,
Pay you
dude.
for this.
Look, they should pay me. I've been like, anyone I can get my hands on. I was like, hey, how's it going, Justin? How you been? I've been alright. Have you seen Hamilton?
That's your personality. That's your identity for like the next few weeks now.
Yeah, that's exactly it, actually. That's exactly it. I'm over-indexing on musicals right now.
Right.
Maybe not even musicals, just specifically Hamilton, because I've never seen
Hamilton.
any other ones. But I do want to try out more musicals now that I've seen this one.
Nice.
But yeah, well,
Alright, bet.
thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Cal, for this great conversation.
Dude, no, cheers. Thank you.
And we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.